So in the 2000s and 2010s, you were a consulting producer on several shows, Lipstick Jungle, Happily Divorced, The Exes, and Blackish.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us a little bit about the role of a consulting producer? And specifically on Blackish, let's talk about.
Well, the role of a consulting producer is to do everything within your skill set. So for me, everything within the showrunner skill set, but for less money. Mm-hmm. And it's really about the opportunity to help others and tell some different stories and challenge yourself in different ways. And I landed on Blackish because I had mentored Kenya in the showrunner training program the year before when he was actually working on the concept for Blackish. And there were a whole lot of issues that he came to me about during that process of even selling it. So before it was sold, I was having conversations with him, and then I read, the early pilot and gave some notes and things like that. So my role on that show was really like his consigliere. I think he would agree that that was kind of my role, kind of behind the scenes, and then more openly and officially when I was on the show. And even then when I was on the show, sometimes I'd be like, psst, psst, how about this? Nope, we're going the wrong way. Maybe we should do it this way. And I guess one example, there were a couple, but one really good example of that was when we decided we were going to take this bold step and do the episode called Hope, which is really about having the talk that certainly I was very exhausted having with my sons about being Black men in America and some of the inherent dangers of that. And we decided to do this really, really powerful episode as a result of, yet another evening when I knew I was going to have to go home and have the talk with my two Black teenage sons. And Kenya bought me a bottle of alcohol. We shared that in the room, and then we said, we have to speak to this. And quite frankly, because it is a very heavy topic, most of the writers were very nervous about us doing it. And even after we had painstakingly broken like every beat of that episode in a large group, it was like all hands on deck, and had lots of great, passionate layered discussion about what we should and shouldn't do in this episode. And then we, Kenya wrote the draft, and then we had an internal table read with just the writers. I mean, like, you could hear a rat piss on cotton. People were so quiet and so afraid of it. But having come up the way I came up, from a different world, living single, and now Blackish, I was not afraid. So I really was, again, in the role of consigliere, encouraging him to boldly move forward with that episode. And I think it was, a real, like, milestone episode for the show, and I think it put it on the map in a way that it would not have otherwise been had we not decided to, go boldly where others were not going at this time in television. And then the flip side of that is this really funny story where, because it was this important episode and weighty episode, a lot of people were nervous about it, as we went through the process. And so there were a lot of eyeballs on it. And when we turned it into the network, like 100 people watched, the initial rough cut. And people really enjoyed it. But it was a little long. And Kenya came to me and he said, "Can you take a look?" And I'm like, yeah, like, this is what I do. I'm made for this. So I go into the edit bay and I look at it and I find the 2 minutes or whatever it was. But I also find a scene where Dre Johnson, the lead character, is walking toward camera in the hallway of his home, and a crew member scampers across the stage. Like 150 people had seen several cuts of this, and no one noticed the prop master walking in the scene. So it's good to have that attention to detail.
Needed your eyes on it for sure.
It definitely did. It definitely did. I mean, we would have all been mortified had we been watching that on television. Like, this is gonna, like, put the show in another conversation in America. Oops. There's the prop master scampering across the foyer. So.
Were you pleased with how the final product, the final episode came out?
I was absolutely pleased with the final episode. I was pleased with that whole show. I think it's a wonderful show. I love that family. I love that cast. I love the family we had behind the scenes. I love, some of the holiday traditions I brought in, like we did Secret Santa. I mean, it was great. And even after leaving the show, after 2 seasons where I felt like my time there had run its course, I'm still really close friends with most of the people. Like we have our Blackish family. And I would go back for certain, kind of monumental table reads. I was there for the final table read. I was there at the 100th party. Those cast and writers and crew, they're family. They're family. It was a really good vibe. It was great to watch those kids grow up. Yeah.
All right, let's talk about another show that you were showrunner on, this time Dear White People. So you were showrunner for the first 3 seasons, stayed on as executive producer for season 4. How did you get involved with that series?
I got involved with Dear White People because the person that was slated to run the show had some kind of conflict by the time the show got picked up. And so they were in search of a new showrunner. And before they shot the pilot, plus 9 episodes. And it was for Netflix, so they were going to make 10. It was kind of a straight-to-series situation. And I had a breakfast meeting with Justin Simien, who told me, like, you were my first choice, but you weren't available. You were on Blackish. I was like, well, look at serendipity. Here we are. And we had a really wonderful conversation about some of the ideas that he had laid out in the Bible and some of the things that he wanted to do. And me being me, little Yellow Truth, now grown Yellow Truth, asked him some hard questions about some of the things he wanted to do. And I think the details of which are not that important, but, there was a tonal shift that he wanted to make at some point in this season. And the specifics of which he wasn't really sure he wanted to do, and I could tell he wasn't sure. And I was like, you shouldn't do it that way. We can find another way. We can find another way to give you what you're looking for. And in fact, that became episode 5, where Reggie had a gun pulled on him at a campus party. But Justin had something else in mind. And I was bold enough in that first meeting to say, I don't think you should do what you're planning to do, and trust that we can do something else. And I thought, he might not want me to come in and work with him, because I was bold enough to say that what he had on paper wasn't what I thought was the best choice, the best move. But we worked together incredibly well. He was really open to collaborating, and I think we hired a terrific staff, and I think that cast, so young, so talented, it's just a group of stars, just amazing. And they did powerful work. And that episode was, directed by Barry Jenkins, and it was daring, even more daring than I think some of the other shows I'd done that had dealt with serious plots. So much so that we had to shut down production for about an hour and a half after shooting the scene where Reggie gets that gun pulled on him. We were all impacted by it because it was just so real. It was just so real and so terrifying. But we felt like a responsibility to depict that reality. We did our research. We certainly were asked questions like, do campus cops have guns? Yes. We wouldn't have put it in front of you if it was fictitious. It always has to be true. For me, it has to be true. It could happen. It may not seem like it happens easily, whatever that, moment is or that twist, but it has to be true. And it was so real. The actor who played Reggie, Marquis Richardson, he got a comfort dog. He got a support animal after that, because it was very, very real. And we were just broken down, sobbing uncontrollably, and just feeling it for, our fellow man. How unfortunate that you could just be living your best life, just being black and free, and that being like in and of itself an act of revolution. And you're now at a party with a gun in your face, being asked for your ID, being asked for your papers. Whew.
Yeah.
It was intense. It was intense. And that was a moment I remember in the room when someone suggested it, and I hate that I can't remember who suggested it, because I know I don't like when I was in the room and someone would say, someone said, and I was always someone, but I don't genuinely remember at the moment. But when someone suggested that he be asked for his ID, and it's just like my blood ran cold, like he was being asked for his papers, like he was a slave. And I'm like, we can't do that. And then I was just like, no, this is that moment where it scares and excites me in equal doses. We have to do it. We have to do it. And that would happen. That absolutely would happen. Because that cop doesn't believe that that black man should be here. How dare he be here in this ivory tower, in this, bastion of higher education? How dare he be there being his free black self? But you can be there. And then you can not be there just that fast. That's the reality that we live with. And unfortunately, that show, as wonderful as it was, its ratings were okay, but they went up 300% after the tragic death of George Floyd in the summer of 2020. It took that for people on their own to go find the show and looking for answers. They're not going to find all the answers there. But, it tells you something about our society, for sure. It tells you the power of the medium. It tells you that people look to the medium for information, for answers, for understanding. So I'm really fortunate to be in a position to provide some modicum of understanding for those who don't live the same existence that I live with my family and my friends.
What was your experience of working with Netflix? Were they very involved on the creative side?
They were, and we had some great, smart, invested executives, and Kristen Zollner and Tara Duncan, who now has established the Onyx Collective. So I'm fortunate enough to work again with Tara. In fact, she was the person who made the call and said, Yvette, I want you to come run this show. But we'll get to that. But they were great. They were great. And it was very freeing. It was very freeing. That was my first streaming experience. So it was interesting for me, kind of boldly going into, creative space where we were really shooting a movie. And Justin, who's a really brilliant director, had a very clear vision for this thing and gave it a beautiful, beautiful look. And also I had to, write nude scenes. And that was very freeing because, there's only so far you can go in network television. So, and we did some wonderful, wild, and unexpected moments. There's a scene, I think it might have been the second episode of season 1, where Lionel, who has a crush on Troy, is thinking about Troy in a sexual way while getting a haircut, and it's really beautiful. It's really artfully done. Like, I hadn't been a part of something that was like, this is art. This isn't just craft. This is art. This is beautiful and emotional. And even though I'm not a gay man, I felt everything he was feeling, and that's successful art. I love it. I loved it.
Having started out in multicam shows, this was a single cam show.
Mm-hmm.
So how does running a multicam show differ from running a single cam show, or does it?
It's all management. It's all being responsible, being in charge, bearing the weight of the production. But yes, there are aspects of it, just a physical production, that differ. But Blackish was also a single camera show. What you don't get are notes, day one through the end of production. People sign off on the script and that's what we're shooting. You do change lines here and there, but it's not that same kind of razzmatazz on the spot. Like, let's punch this up, gang. Let's have a little huddle. Let's see what we can refresh this joke on the fly for the audience. Let's see if this works. But it's rewarding in different ways. But managing a show is managing a show, so it's not that different. You plan it different, and the way the week unfolds is different. But that's really it.
You wrote a couple episodes of the show. You co-wrote Volume 2, Chapter 9, which is the episode where Sam goes home after her father passes away. Why did you want to write that episode in particular?
I pitched that episode and wrote it because I wanted to pay homage to my mother, who passed away the first week I worked on Blackish. So for some period of time, I'd been trying to find a way to process my grief other than eating. I carried that weight around for a long time. And also I hired my dear friend Nash in Dubai, who had lost her husband and writing partner some years earlier. And he had written this beautiful letter. And so in the process of sharing all of our stories about loved ones and lost ones, she really felt like she wanted to share part of that letter. And that's why we decided to co-write it, because that was so personal. How could we not? But we also felt like we wanted to process our grief together in the writing process. Like, neither one of us really wanted to sit with it alone, So when you talk about process and like,
comes to TV, writers put a little bit of themselves into a TV show. Let me know in the comments, what part of you would you love to see in TV?
setting the mood and what you do. Like, there's some times when things are just that heavy and that deep and that personal that you don't necessarily want to, you sit alone with it. You want to go through it, because we do get tremendous catharsis and release from the work and the art that we put out into the world. But sometimes you don't want to be isolated with it. So we decided to do it together, and it was wonderful. It was really wonderful. It's the first time we had written together. So we split 2 episodes. That's how we did that.
That episode really highlights the relationships between Sam and Joelle and Coco. And Sam and Coco weren't even particularly close at that point in time, but
Right.
she insists on coming.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about the female friendships on
Yes,
the show?
I love that. Again, my brand is, sisterhood, enviable female friendships. And we had a lot of discussion about that, because Justin wasn't particularly in favor of Coco also going. And I was adamant about it. I just felt like there wasn't going to be a lot of conflict for, Sam to just go with her, bestie and co-signer in life, Joelle. Not that it wouldn't be interesting, but I really felt like I wanted that girls' trip element of it. And also, one of the things that we came up with in the room, because we were, fleshing out the series based on the film, was that at one point, Coco and Sam were close. And in season 1, we did an episode where we saw that they were close, and we saw where the riff began. So it was nice to kind of play that out and to remind those girls of what they once meant to each other. So it was great to have all 3 of them together.
What do you think the legacy of Dear White People is?
A legacy of depicting the world as it is, warts and all. Warts and all. Really taking a lot of systems and a lot of attitudes to task.
Yeah.
And we had a great time doing it.
So let's move on to the next show that you were showrunner on. You were showrunner in the first season of Run the World for
Yes.
Stars, which shot in 2020 during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about what pandemic production was like at that time, what that overall experience was like?
Yes. Run the World is a beautiful show that I started to develop with the show creator in 2018. We sold it in January of 2019. Got picked up to pilot in August of that year. And we shot the pilot in December of 2019. And in the first weeks of 2020, we turned in our pilot and got picked up to series. We were so excited. This is going to be fun. We're going to make a show in New York. It's going to be sexy. It's going to be amazing. Can't wait. And 3 weeks into the writer's room, we all got sent home into a land of Zoom and trying to figure out how to be creative and collaborative and collegial from our disparate corners of the world, while also feeling the pressure of this great unknown that was the pandemic. So that created a lot of challenges, just personally and creatively, keeping people engaged. There were some writers who went home to just their pets. There were no people with them. And so there were certain issues to be managed that were new issues for me. I understand the job. And part of it is being like a psychologist, or a priest or a parent. You're all of those things when you're a showrunner. But now I'm a showrunner in a new P, the pandemic, right? And so it starts to get real personal because now you're inside people's rooms. You're inside their homes. You're in their bedrooms. You're in whatever room they choose to be in while they're going through, this global phenomenon. So the writing took longer, but we got there. And then we finally got the green light. New York was seeming like it was opening up. We got the green light to go into production on the subsequent 7 episodes. And then there were just all of these provisions that had to be dealt with. We had to have conversations with each of the cast members that were going to be, on set and on location in New York with the COVID team and walk everyone through that process. We also, had to get everyone on board for the testing protocols, which wasn't as easy as you think, because, as you know, everyone had a different philosophy about, COVID in general. So it was managing a lot of new things. And then when we got there, after thinking we'd, leapt over all these preparation hurdles, being on set, on location with a crew of over 150 people, most of whom had gone into their homes at the height of the pandemic and not come outside. They were terrified. People were scared, and rightfully so. But they had to come out because they had to feed their families. So it was managing something like, there was nothing like anything I had managed before. And we managed to do it professionally and with grace and with consideration for everyone's concerns. And we managed to get through it without shutting down for COVID. And when I got on the plane, I breathed a sigh of relief that we had accomplished this monumental thing. Because there were a lot of people who also were acting outside of themselves, out of fear, on any given day. It was unrelenting. The management of it, the problem solving, the dousing out of fires, most of which were emotional for people. And when I landed in LA, I wept. And when I got home to my family, I was like, I'm so proud of how we managed that. I never thought that that would be the feather I put in my cap after, producing this beautiful, funny show. It's like, I managed the pandemic. Yeah. Because it was also a surge. As we started out in September and we ended in the second to last week of December. So there was a surge. So it was interesting because emotionally, I think it was a lot like going into a war zone. And there's just constant triage and lots of audibles that you have to call. We can't shoot this way. We can't shoot this in this location. We can't use this many people. We're going to have to, add some people in post, which also just sounded bananas. But we were figuring out a lot of it as we went. And then but it was also like tremendously gratifying because like I figured it out, along with my amazing line producer, Caroline. It was great. It was great. It tested what we were made of, but we came out the other side pretty whole.
And then it got a second season.
So how can you not feel accomplished when you not only survive something that new and that unknown, but you thrive in it? So, growth.
You had mentioned Onyx Collective, and you got a chance to work with them. Tell us a little bit about working with them on UnPrisoned.
I love the Onyx Collective. I love what it's about. I love that it's, for us, by us. It's not a network that's trying to build its programming and its reputation on the backs of minorities and then discard us. It has a very clear agenda that it's true to. And I'm super excited to be part of that. I'm hoping that we're going to do a second season of UnPrisoned, and, I'd like to do another project with them. I mean, I love Tara Duncan. I think she is one of the smartest executives that I've worked with in the last almost 40 years. And been around a while, guys. And I've seen a lot. And I've worked with a lot of really good executives. But she's also one of those rare executives who's operating from a real passion for the material and the people who create the content, and not operating from a place of fear. A lot of decisions get made in this town out of fear. Whether it's cancellation or a quick pickup of something that isn't quite fully baked, a lot of decisions do get made out of fear. And she doesn't operate from that place, which is like very reassuring and calming for me as a creative, leading a show. So I'm really excited about what Onyx is establishing and what they can be in the future.
So UnPrisoned also shot during the pandemic, but 2022 pandemic. Is that correct? Is that when it shot?
Yeah, so we still had testing protocols and we wore masks, but things were much more relaxed.
Yeah.
We did have a couple people get sent home because of false tests in the middle of a day. So it does, it certainly presents some new challenges for modern day production, but it's worth it to keep everybody safe, because you certainly wouldn't want, to not have tested people or to not have followed the protocols and for someone to fall ill.
And the writer's room was over Zoom? Is that correct?
The writer's room was over Zoom.
Tell us
this
what
is the new day.
Yeah, what is that like compared to an in-the-room writer's room?
The Zoom room can be very efficient and very productive and very creative. I personally don't love it because I love those in-between moments. The moment in the hallway, that you have with someone else, as opposed to, boop, I'm on screen, boop, I'm out of here. I do think that people's attention is maybe a little more split in this new Zoom universe as well. But we've made the best of it. And I just miss the camaraderie of the room and that process. It's a collaborative medium. Television is a collaborative medium. I want to collaborate in person with people and feel connected to them. Because also sometimes like tone and intention get a little lost. If you're sitting on a Zoom and someone's talking to you and they just like shift in their chair and seem to lean in, it might be read as or felt as aggression. And I've seen that happen. And then suddenly I'm mediating between two people who meant nothing ill to each other but misinterpreted a movement in a Zoom because you're just a big head and you're leaning in and you weren't even that passionate about the point you were making, but suddenly it's misinterpreted, and people do tend to talk over each other a little bit more in the Zoom, so that just becomes another layer of micromanagement that's maybe a little exhausting at times. Also, you don't have that big board that we're all looking at. We're not, we're looking at something, plus we're looking at each other as opposed to just looking at the board. It's kind of disorienting at times, and we purposefully shorten the time that we spend there because you just get that Zoom exhaustion and drainage from looking at a screen for too long, you know? So like I said, it can be more efficient, but it's also a more detached process, you know? And I like those moments in between, because sometimes like a really good idea can come from pouring a cup of coffee next to somebody, and you're just like running it by some idea by them. Maybe an idea that you don't really want to say in the room, you know. You want to get someone else to back you up or co-sign. So I miss those moments, and then having, you know, all the writers on set when they can be there. That's something that we don't have now, because we have to have limited numbers of people. Hopefully that's changing, because I think it's important for the development of writers, you know, into producers. They actually get that hands-on experience, because you can't really learn it from a distance and watching someone else do it or seeing the results of their work. You need to be at the scene of the fire and witness how the firefighters put it out so that you can figure out how to turn on that hydrant, how to hold that hose so you don't get blown backwards. So I think it's really important for the next generation of writers, showrunners, to get that hands-on experience throughout the entire process, from the page to the stage to post, because that's where the show really gets finished, polished, and post.
In 2023, there are still now a lot of Zoom writers' rooms. We're hearing that pitches often happen through Zoom now. Do you think a lot of these things are likely to persist that way, or do you think they'll return to pre-pandemic times?
I think the Zoom pitch is here to stay. And I think the Zoom rooms are here to stay. And one advantage of the Zoom room is that you can hire someone who's incredibly talented, who's perfect for your staff, who lives in Timbuktu or wherever, you know, so that's great. You know, and people just work around, you know, the time differences. But I think that's one advantage, but I think it's minimal. I mean, ideally, I would have a hybrid room. If you're here in town, you know, let's all sit down. Didn't mean to rhyme, but it just does. And, you know, if other people want to come in and spend some time, then they can. But I think a hybrid room is probably the next best thing. And I'd like to try that out in season 2 of UnPrisoned and beyond. I think pitches, unless you demand they be in person, are going to be forever on Zoom, for sure, because it's just very efficient in terms of the time the network and studio executives have. You know, they're just able to go from one pitch to the next. But I do, once again, being an old head, I miss that, like, in-person small talk, you know, where you might even, like, Stephen Cannell, just perch yourself on the arm of the sofa and be like, I'm this cool guy and I've got this pitch for you. He demonstrated that once at the showrunner training program. I was like, he's so cool. He's so smart. I get it. I totally get it. I'm buying whatever you're selling because you're so cool and so confident. I wish I had that. I don't. I've sold many pitches, but I never perched on the arm of anybody's couch at HBO or anywhere else and sold something. But he's done it. And I believe him. I believe whatever he says.
What do you do to prep for a pitch?
So much work to prep for a pitch. Build a world. Build characters. Build a Bible. Where do I see this show going? It's a lot of prep. And then, so it's taking...
What this young lady has exposed bits and pieces of her life on many different TV shows. Let me know in the comments, how well do you think she would do in front of the camera? Me personally, I think she should take the chance. I really do.
Very dense material and cutting it down to what now, also because of Zoom fatigue, needs to be for a half hour. Like, they want to hear your pitch in like 20 minutes. And someone was telling me it's like 7 to 13 minutes. I'm like, why are the rules changing? You still need to know certain information. And very few people are selling their pitches in the room in Zoom. So it's not like, okay, the pitching is more brief, and so that helps people discern whether or not the idea works for them faster. It doesn't. There's just certain things that you need to know. So, you know, I've kind of put my foot down a little bit, like, it takes the time that it takes. You know, I'm going to be respectful of people's time, but For me, I think a pitch should be scheduled for an hour, and it should be 25 to 30 minutes of the creators pitching it, and then questions and answers. You know, I think that pitching something in 7 to 13 minutes, because we're now in the Zoom world, is absurd. I don't write commercials. That's like asking me to write a commercial. You know, when I've done all of this work building out a world, and now it's about speed pitching, I think that's not great for the industry. I don't think it's good for the business, because I think you're going to miss a lot of really good ideas. And also maybe get a little fooled by the razzle dazzle. It's like the person who can do the elevator pitch, but all they know about it is what they tell you in the elevator. That will not get you a series, my friend.
So now we just have a few summing up questions, and we've been talking a little bit about this already, but how are some other ways that television has changed since you first started in the industry?
There's a lot more of it.
Yes.
Which is a beautiful thing. More stories, more opportunities, more pathways to success.
Back in the 80s and 90s or now? Let me know in the comments.
More diverse stories. I think that's the way it's changed. I do think that there might be a bit of a contraction of the business because it expanded very wide very quickly, and that usually warrants some correction. But I think that we're going to continue to have a lot of opportunities and hear from a lot of new voices, and I think that's a beautiful thing.
So we at the Television Academy have been conducting these oral history interviews for over 25 years now. What do you think? Yay! Thank you. What do you think is the value of preserving these kinds of behind-the-scenes stories from within the industry?
I think it's invaluable. Just knowing how many people have seen me do various things and kind of climb the ladder and been inspired, I think it's a wonderful thing to be part of. I'm honored to be here, and also really enjoyed watching other people's, pieces and telling their story. I really have. So I think that's where I'll get some more advice to fill my advice cup with.
What advice would you give to an aspiring writer?
Do the work. A lot of people say they want to write, and they have written nothing. Or they've written one thing, and they've been peddling that one thing for like 10 years. Writers write. And writing is rewriting. So do the work. If you want it, that's how you get it.
What advice would you give to an aspiring showrunner?
Careful what you wish for. I think I said that earlier, but I do mean it. It's a wonderful, wonderful job, but it is taxing. And I enjoy it. I enjoy it because I've found ways to make it easier. To delegate or die. Mm-hmm. But also I've continued to add tools to my tool belt over the years and just, fortify the way I go about doing it. So I think I make it look easy because I've found ways to make it easier. But it's a big job. It's a big job. So find some collaborators, find some partners.
Earlier this year, you were the recipient of the Writers Guild Patty Chayefsky Laurel Award. What did that mean to you?
It was the affirmation I didn't even know I needed. It's that simple.
You gave a beautiful speech.
Thank you.
And I know a lot of the Living Single cast members were there supporting you as well.
Mm-hmm. And Latifah called me the day before. We talked for 90 minutes. She was working on the equalizer. So they were all there, the other 5, and she was there in spirit for sure. Yeah. I mean, that was special because a lot of people have received that honor and their cast members didn't show up like that. And there were over 100 writers who showed up because of little old me. Yeah. Whew, yeah.
And it's an award that
pretty
comes
amazing.
From your peers, from fellow writers.
Absolutely. It's powerfully affirming. I mean, it's just that simple. Like I said, it's the acknowledgement I didn't know I needed because I don't really work for that. Someone asked me in a post-production session if I ever got an Emmy. And I said, no, but I got to shift the culture. And that's what's meaningful to me.
What would you say is your proudest career achievement?
I mean, that's kind of like asking me to pick my favorite kid. I would say it's shifting the culture and continuing to do so. I mean, it's been almost 40 years. Not many people can say that. Like, I'm still here. Survivor.
And making an impact.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very reluctant to think about my work and frame it as important with a capital I, but I'm incredibly proud of the impact that it's had over the decades. How can I not be? Like, I think it's important to remain humble, but I'm definitely proud of that. With all due humility.
Absolutely. Have you had any career regrets?
Oh, they know who they are. They know who they are.
The perfect answer. And then where do you see yourself 10 years from now?
On a beach somewhere. Whether it's on earth or in heaven. On a beach somewhere. Probably writing in my journal.
I cannot thank you enough for spending the time with us today, Yvette. It has been such an honor and a pleasure to get to chat with you.
Thank you. Thanks for making it so easy.
Oh, my pleasure.
Because you know, I don't love to be on camera. I'm behind the scenes kind of gal.
You did amazing.
And now you know why.
No, honestly, I think everything you shared is going to be so beautiful. Your story itself is so impactful. And I know you were reluctant to sit here and share it with us, but it's going to mean so much to so many people, for future generations, to be able to see everything that you've accomplished, the way that you've accomplished it, and the impact that you're going to make still for decades and generations to come.
Thank you.
So thank you so much.
I've tried to do it with dignity and grace.
Absolutely.
That's all I know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Types of interviews. But when it comes to this particular interview compared to all the rest, so far, they didn't ask her that one question that they've asked all the others. So I want you to answer that question in the comments. What do you think her legacy is? What do you think she wants the world to best remember her for? You have watched Yvette Bowser interview, part 4 of 4.